Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Thiskid, and today we're going to be talking about Fire Mage in PvE. We have a few things to talk about: race, stat priority, covenants. Along with that comes Conduits and Soulbinds. We also want to talk about talents, rotation, and at the end I'm going to give some tips because I used to play Frost Mage primarily, and I remember the transition to Fire Mage was a little bit harder for me, so there's some things that I picked up on the way, and hopefully I can help you out. So first things first, I want to get a general idea across, and this goes for every class actually, but the idea is in the form of an expression. The expression is shoot for the stars, land in the clouds. And I know that people have heard different versions of that expression, or whatever the case may be, but the same idea applies. You generally want to min-max as much as possible outside of the content that you're doing, whether it be PvE, PvP, whatever. And because of that min-maxing outside of it, you will, even with not the best execution, you'll still do much better than the average person. So with that being said, let's go over one of the most overlooked things in all of World of Warcraft when it comes to either doing damage or mitigating damage, and that's going to be the race. So for Horde, the best race is going to be Troll because of the racial berserking, which increases your haste by 10% for 12 seconds and has a 3-minute cooldown. The second best race is going to be Orc because of the Blood Fury racial, which increases your intellect by 122 for 15 seconds and has a 2-minute cooldown. The best race for Alliance is going to be Mechanome because of the combat analysis racial, which states, you gather and analyze combat data every 5 seconds, increasing your primary stat by 4, stacking up to 10 times. The data decays out of combat. The second best race for Alliance is going to be the Dark Iron Dwarf. That's because of the Fireblood racial, which is a 2-minute cooldown, and it states, removes all poison, disease, curse, magic, and bleed effects, and increases your primary stat by 183, and an additional 61 for each effect removed. Lasts 8 seconds. Next we'll go over stat priority, which is something that generally changes a lot, but for now it is intellect, haste, versatility, mastery, and then crit at the end. Now we'll talk about covenants, which is kind of a weird thing because for Frost you want something different, and for Arcane you want something different. But as far as Fire Mage and PvE goes, you're going to want nightfae. It's going to be the best because of shifting power. It's kind of a pulsing covenant ability, and what it does is a lot of AoE damage, and while you're doing that, you get a lot of cooldown reduction, and this reduces the cooldown of not only combustion and your bigger cooldowns, but also the smaller ones like Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames. So the reason nightfae is the best for PvE, and also arguably PvP as well, is because Fire Mage only cares about combustion. Anything outside of combustion is really lackluster. We don't really do much outside of combustion, so anything we can do to reduce the cooldown or do more damage inside of combustion, that's going to be the choice that we're going to make every single time. So conduits are a little bit weird right now, and the reason for that is, first of all, we don't have enough renown to get fully through our trees yet. The second reason is people have different covenants, so not all of the Soulbinds that are ideal are going to have the same amount of potency slots that another covenant is going to have. With that in mind, I did make a kind of like a tier list for conduits, potency conduits in particular. The top of the tier list is going to be Infernal Cascade. This is every time we cast a Fire Blast, we're going to get an extra 11% fire damage for 5 seconds. It also stacks, so that is just insane for us. Like I said before, anything in combustion or anything we can do to reduce the cooldown or do more damage in combustion, that's going to be the ideal choice for us. Number 2 on the tier list is going to be Controlled Destruction, and that is just a hard pyroblast damage increase. It's going to increase it by 5%. So whenever you go to look at the damage meters, you go to details, recount, whatever you're using, you're going to see pyroblast at the top of the list. So increasing the damage for that is going to be very, very essential as well. If you're doing a lot of Mythic Plus, Master Flame is actually going to be more important than Controlled Destruction here. And that's because Master Flame is going to increase the damage of Flamestrike by 9% and increase its radius by 10%. When you're doing Mythic Plus, most of your damage, if you look at details or recount or whatever you choose to use, most of your damage is going to be Flamestrike, and so you want to do everything you can to increase the damage of that. At the same time, Infernal Cascade is still going to be more important, but Master Flame is going to be kind of a tier 2 conduit. In the third spot, we're going to put Covenant Conduits, and that is because they don't do too much, but they're definitely better than Flame Accretion, which has a lot to do with your mastery, and mastery is basically worthless right now at least. So we do not really want to worry about that. We don't want that anywhere on our tree. You don't need to worry about finesse conduits too much, but the main thing you want to worry about is flow of time. It's going to reduce the cooldown of blink and also for shimmer. And shimmer is going to allow you to cast while still avoiding things on the ground. Grounding Surge is also going to be important. It's going to be the second most important conduit. What it's going to do is reduce the cooldown of Counterspell if you successfully interrupt something. For Endurance Conduits, Cryo Freeze is the most important by far. It's going to almost heal you up to full while you're in Ice Block. The other two, Diverted Energy and Tempest Barrier, are, I would say, equally as important. Diverted Energy seems a little bit better, so I'll put that maybe as second and Tempest Barrier as third, but typically you're only going to want to go for one Endurance Conduit anyway, so go for Cryo Freeze. So again, I know that everyone has a different covenant, and so what I'm going to do to kind of generalize everything here is I'm going to give the best Soulbind for each covenant, and at that point I'm going to post a picture of what each tree should look like once it's completed. For Kyrian, the best Soulbind is going to be Pelagos. For Necrolord, Emeni is going to be the best. For Venthyr, you want to go with Nadja. For nightfae, you want to go with Korain. And the only difference here is you can go Dreamweaver for AoE if you'd like. For talents, in order to not make this video too long, I'm going to go over the talent that we choose and kind of give a brief description of why we choose it. So in the first row, we're going to choose Searing Touch. That basically gives us our execute damage with Scorch critting every time. We do a double Scorch and a Pyroblast, or a Scorch, Fire Blast, and then Pyroblast. It just gives us way more damage than the other two talents. So in the second row, we're going to be choosing Shimmer. Shimmer allows us to blink out of mechanics while we're casting. This allows us to do more damage in the end because we don't have to stop our casting during mechanics. So in the third row, we're going to be choosing Rune of Power. Incanter's Flow is very good, but Rune of Power just works way better with fire, especially in Shadowlands. It gets automatically dropped when you cast Combustion. And like I said before, we are looking to do as much as possible inside of our Combustion as possible. So the extra 40% damage from Rune of Power is amazing for that. So in the fourth row, we're going to be choosing Flame On. Flame On is just the best by far. Alexstras's Fury can maybe make an appearance in PvP, but that is about the only place, honestly. From the Ashes is going to increase our mastery, which we don't really care about right now. Flame On is going to increase our Fire Blast usability, not only for Combustion, but also outside of Combustion as well. None of the talents in row 5 really have too much power. I choose Frenetic Speed as well as a lot of other people. and it's mostly just to get a little bit of a speed boost, maybe position a little bit better during fights. If you do a lot of mythics, you can maybe choose Ring of Frost to get some more utility, but really either of these can be chosen. Ice Ward isn't amazing, but Ring of Frost or Frenetic Speed are the ideal two choices here. So row 6 is really dependent on which type of content you're doing. If you're doing Mythic Plus and you're doing a lot of AoE, Flame Patch is amazing. But if you're doing single target damage, you're not going to be using Flamestrike at all. So Conflagration becomes the ideal talent for single target. Living Bomb basically doesn't get used at all. And in the last row, Kindling is the talent we're going to go with. That is because we're getting closer and closer to Combustion. Like I said before, Combustion is the most important thing that we are always looking forward to. That is all of our damage. We want to do everything that we can to get Combustion back or increase our damage during Combustion. So the ideal single target DPS rotation starts with a hard casted Fireball or Pyroblast. After that, you're going to use Combustion. You're going to use it while you're casting the Fireball or Pyroblast in order to crit one of those. You got to kind of mess around with this because of latency. Sometimes you might have to press Combustion a little bit earlier. So after that, you're going to be using Fireblast, Pyroblast, Fireblast, Pyroblast, and then you're going to throw in Phoenix Flames, Pyroblast, and then one more Fireblast, Pyroblast. Now there are some variations to this, so this depends on your Covenant. If you are Curian or Necrolord, you want to use your Covenant ability right before Combustion. If you're Venthyr or nightfae, you want to use your Covenant ability right after Combustion. So that should be the end of your Combustion. What you want to do at that point is continue spamming Fireball over and over and over until you get a heating up proc. And then you're going to cast Fireblast, Pyroblast, and then you keep spamming Fireball again until you get that heating up proc. Something to note is you do definitely want to keep track of how many Fireblasts you have and when your Combustion is coming up, because you want to have at least 2 to 3 Fireblasts for that Combustion. For AoE, all you're going to be doing is spamming Flamestrike. I have a macro that I'm going to be putting in the description that basically allows you to cast Flamestrike on your mouse without selecting the area. So that makes it a lot easier to just spam the button and not really have to worry about it. During Combustion, you're just going to be using Fireblast, Phoenix Flames. You're going to get your Hot Streak and you're going to cast Flamestrike again. And then outside of it, literally all you do is just cast Flamestrike. The only two caveats here are you can sometimes double Fireblast Flamestrike just to get a hot streak and then Flamestrike for free. And also if you have a target that is below 30%, since you have that talent, you can cast Scorch twice, get a hot streak, and cast Flamestrike for free. So that's about it. AoE on Fire Mage isn't really that hard to keep up with. Not really much to do besides spamming Flamestrike the whole time. Last thing we'll talk about is the legendary. So Fevered Incantation is by far the best. You can use it in your head or waist, and it drops from Orano Monos. He's the world boss in Ardenweald. So Fevered Incantation basically just increases your crit damage overall. It's hard to really describe why this is the best because it is one of the most passive legendaries that we have. But overall it is the best in rating and Mythic Plus. So last thing I wanted to do is just go over some general tips. I know I had some issues playing fire in the beginning, so some things that helped me were remembering Rune of Power after Combustion every time. If you do that, everything should line up pretty correctly with cooldowns and stuff like that. Don't make it too difficult, just use Rune of Power right after Combustion ends, and you should be okay. Second thing is training. Use training dummies as much as possible. Use heroics for Mythic Plus and use Raid Finder for raids. All these things help you get your rotations down and get more comfortable with the spec generally. So last thing I want to say, and I don't think this is talked about enough, is try to be as close to your target as possible without kind of killing yourself. Fire Mage depends a lot on specific timings for procs and spells hitting the target, so you want to be pretty close, otherwise things will get kind of out of sync. Combustion might be less effective, things like that. So remember to be close. So that's about it. That's going to be the guide. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and you have a very, very good rest of your day.